Okay, if your Kobra X print head looks like this and you need help reassembling it, I am going to do my best to show you how I'm going to reassemble mine. So let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to put on here is going to be this guy. I'm going to try to make sure that these little flaps are going to be facing my hot end and that this little notch is firmly seated in that little circle hole in the back, just like that. These little plastic arms, they have to go on in a certain order because they are different. One has a dark spring, one has a light spring, in my case anyway. And the way that I'm going to put them on is this one where the spring is closest to the top, because they go in like this, top. This is going to go on first. This is the one for me, has the light silver spring. The one that has the dark colored spring or black spring and the spring is seated towards the rear, that one is going to go on top of this one. All right, so, okay. When you're putting this on, here, let me zoom in just a little bit. There's a little spring arm right here, and that spring arm needs to go up over this little shelf. So when you push it on there, make sure you do that. Also, a little PSA about these springs, don't lose them. But there is a little notch in the housing where these springs can be removed and replaced if they wear out or whatever, or maybe it's there for installation. I don't really know. But if that little spring arm comes out of that little groove, it could fly off all over your room and you'll never ever see it. It's very tiny. There. See how my little spring head is up above that shelf? Now I can lower it in. And it's seated nice and snug against the housing. If you turn it to the side, you can see right there, there's no gap between the back of the housing and this arm, which is what you want. You don't want a little gap there. If you have a gap, it could be because your shaft turned and this thing was in the way, that little flap. If that was in the way, it won't slide down all the way. So try just giving this a little bit of a spin and then you'll see it seat properly. All right, the next one, let's just finish putting these guys on. Okay, so on the left side, the springs are opposite colors. So remember how I had a silver spring and a black spring over here? It's the opposite over here. I still have a silver and a black, but they stack on the opposite way. I don't know if that's by design or not, but so this side, here's the black spring. This one is going to be going on first because the spring is closer to the front of my printer. So I'm going to put this on. And before I lower it down, I'm going to move the spring up and slide it over that little shelf. And then lower my arm down all the way to the back housing. Same thing with this guy. We're just gonna place it on, pull the spring out of the just using some tweezers, and then slide it down. All right. I just had to wiggle this a little bit so that the little flaps back there would get out of the way so that this could fully seat. It was just ever so slightly raised. I can't put the hot end on yet because I have to rebuild the throat of my heatsink anyway. So we're gonna take this little bowl here and put it back in our heat sink and make sure, ooh, that went upside down. We're gonna put it back in the heat sink exactly the way that it was positioned when we took it out, which is the larger part of the bowl facing up and the narrow part of the bowl facing down. So there, I'm gonna drop it in, and then I'm gonna make sure it seats all the way down. On top of that, we have this 4-hole assembly. It has a little notch right here. Right here, you can see this little bump. On the top of the heat sink, you'll see a little bump on this side of the hole near the cutting blade right here. So it's not perfectly straight. That's where this is gonna slide in. And then we need to make sure that stays in and doesn't jump around during print. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the tiniest, smallest, let me see what size that is, 1.5 hex key in this little hole right here and tighten it. Then in here, I'm going to make sure that my thermistor and the other electronic wire that goes to my hot end is behind my cutting arm, not in front of it. And this is like a fan cable that also goes behind the cutting arm, not in front of it. I don't know if that's too important right now because you can move that later, but once you put the screws in, you can't really move this and this wire. So those are the ones that I'm going to focus on for right now. And I'm going to go ahead and put these mounting screws back on. And that is with a different hex key. So I'm all done with this little guy. Put him back. I don't want to lose my tools, so I try to keep them really organized. And this is a 2.5. Yeah. All right. And if you need tweezers to like lower this down in there, by all means. If you want to put a tiny little magnet on your hex key, just so you don't lose track of your screw, because that is a very deep recessed spot. I'm not going to tighten this side all the way just yet because I want to make sure that this hole can move around a little bit and line up that screw. And if you're wondering why I'm using a screwdriver to put this one in, it's because this is a PC screw. It's not the original screw that came on my hot end, because I stripped it when I was taking it out. They're in there so tightly with this blue like Loctite glue stuff, and I should have given it a really swift jerk when I was removing it, and I didn't. So I had to get a replacement screw, which thankfully, since we have a bunch of tech at the house, I had a drawer full of screws. If you don't have a drawer full of screws, I guess you don't relate to this, but we do. So there's my PC screw, fits in there perfectly. And now I'm going to tighten this one. So just making sure everything is nice and tight. So that's the hot end. That's in. My nozzle is still mounted. I never had to take the nozzle out because I didn't need to for the thing that I was doing. Now I guess we could put our fan back on. You're just gonna make sure that this wire here stays out of the way while you lower your fan back into its home where you removed it from in the first place. These wires are fighting, so I'm gonna say the fan goes lower than the heat sink wire. I'm gonna, just because it's a little shorter. There. Ah, yes, everything is nice and happy and flush now. So my fan wire had to slide behind. This is the sensor wire for like strain gauge wire. Okay, so up next is going to be the motor for your extruder. You'll see right in there, there's threading, and that threading matches up with this wheel and it turns it. So that's how your wheel turns. If you've touched this a whole lot, you've probably got a lot of grease on your fingertips and you've probably removed a lot of grease. So before you put this back on, if you feel like you need to add a little more grease to this, please do. A little packet did come with your machine. I'm just gonna use a little white lithium grease. You do not need a ton of grease, like maybe the size of a rice grain. It's really all you need. Okay, let's put this back on. Goes like this, and you want to make sure it's just nice and snug and tight against everything before you try to start screwing things down. And then just start filling holes. I like how you have this little window right here, so that you can see that your gear and your screw threads are meeting up. And if you forgot to put a little bead of grease on there, you could probably just get the grease in there like that, just a little dot. Okay, that's on. We're doing good, no big deal, no struggles yet except for those darn springs. All right, so next, put our little numbers back on, our little display. I like how you have this little window right here, so that you can see that your gear and your screw threads are meeting up. And if you forgot to put a little bead of grease on there, you could probably just get the grease in there like that, just a little dot. Okay, that's on. We're doing good, no big deal, no struggles yet except for those darn springs. All right, so next, put our little numbers back on, our little display. Right there. Just line them up until it kind of like seats really nicely. You're not really going to hear an audible click, but you'll feel it. Everything will feel nice and snug. And just pop your 2 screws on that. Okay, next thing is the gear detection sensor. You'll see right here, there's like a little slot. That's so that this wire can get out of the way of the housing when you go to put this back in the housing. So slide it up like that. And then right here is the gear detection sensor itself, the filament. That little notch, it's counted by this little sensor. I have looked at this print head and there are 9, as far as I could tell, of this little sensor. There's 4 that feed up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 little sensors like that right at the top, and there's 4 more inside there right here. 2 on this side and 2 on the other side, and then you got this guy. So as far as I can tell, there's 9 of these things on here, and they're kind of fragile. So be very careful when you're taking this off and when you're putting it back on, because you really don't want to break. Now, I will tell you that I did break mine. I broke this one actually when I was trying to put this on the disc. And the first time I did this before recording, just as a practice dry run, you have to make sure that the sensor, right, you see how it's like a little U shape? It grabs onto the little disc right there with the notch in it that I just showed you. You have to make sure that it seats around that. And I always expected it to be snug. Like, I always expected it to like clip in or have some sort of like either tactile clip feel to it or an audible click or something when it clips on there, and it didn't. It just kind of sat there loosely, and I kept thinking, okay, that's not right. That can't be right. I didn't feel that loose when I was taking this thing apart. So I kind of just wiggled this a little bit a couple of times, and it seats in there like that, but then it's loose, right? And I'm like, no, there's no way that that's right. So I took it off, I put it back on, took it off, put it back on, and it snapped off. And I was like, wait, that easily broke. Okay. Thankfully, we soldered it back on. You see how loose this is, even though it's on there correctly, and you can feel that it's grabbing the disc, right? It's on there. It's just when I let go of the wire, it kind of loosely flops around. I'm going to tell you right now, don't worry too much about that. Because the back side of this case has a little bracket that holds that chip in place. So this is a known thing. Yeah, this is kind of how it stabilizes that chip, so it doesn't like flop back off all the time. Okay, next thing to do, you guessed it, was put this little cover on. I guess my only advice is don't just leave this off and print without the cover on because of the little bracket. So I'm just gonna do this like, oops, at an angle. Let me zoom out so that I can make sure that my bracket is actually grabbing onto that little sensor board to keep it stable. And then just screw it down. Let's put the housing back on. This fan wire needs to stay behind the cutting arm. And we're going to gently flex the housing so that the cutting arm can slide into the hole, and we're good. We're back home where it wants to be. Speaking of that fan wire, this part cooling fan needs to be plugged back in and mounted back on. I kind of just used the bottom of the print head to push it against to make sure that it was in there nice and snug. Okay, so now that that's on there, let me zoom out. All right, so you'll notice on this side, there's a little hook right there. Okay, and under here, there's a little slot. All right, on this side, there is no hook, but we do have a little hook here. So, and that goes into this slot right here. Let's line everything up. So this is how you're going to put this on, kind of like a hinge style, right? Get yourself nice and set up, hinge it on, and then slide it forward. We're locked in here, and we're locked in here, and our screw holes line up. If these screw holes don't line up, you will have a hard time getting the screw in. And then if we look down here, our wire ended up in the cubby hole where we wanted it to be. Everything's good. Next is to put on these screws. And yeah, I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, oh my gosh, I can see your screw tray over there and you have extra screws. Yeah, let me tell you, those are not extra. I have 2 screws for this guy. And I also had another spare print head where I removed this guy. So 2 of those go to this. I do not have extra screws. If you're done and you have extra screws, you definitely need to go back and watch the video again. All right, so front housing, nothing special about this really. It just has clips that will snap on and you will feel and hear an audible snap. Little gap, give it a little wiggle, snaps right in. Okay, everything's back in place. This actually wasn't too bad. The only thing that was kind of a pain in the butt was the little springs attached to the little plastic arms. If you didn't have to take those on, this went way easier for you. Put this guy back on. It does not matter if you put it this way or this way. None of these are numbered. Just put it on and get your screws in. Anytime you do a DIY project like this where you're not 100% savvy in repair, I find it best to make sure that I'm organized in advance. When I take my screws off, I put them in order that I take them off. When I take parts off of the machine, I also lay them out in order of which I took them off. Okay, so the next step is going to be putting your tool head back on your printer. You'll see here that you have 4 screw holes on the back of your print head, and you'll have 4 screw holes to screw them into up here on the machine. So you'll have 1 in here, you'll have 1 in here, you'll have 1 here, and you'll have 1 over here. So that's where the screws will go. These are the bigger screws, the 2.5 hex. Everything else on the print head was 2. This is why a little magnet would help. Okay, everything's screwed back on, print head firmly in place. Next thing we want is our power cord. Where's our power? Hanging up over here. All right, so power cord has a little tab on it right here. Okay. Make sure that it tabs on the left side there. And you click it in and you feel it click. I kind of heard it too. And then this little groove right here helps to keep this guy out of the way. Put your cover on. The little notch on the side of your cover, if you're looking at the back of your machine, goes in your left. Over here you can see like 2 little clips. You can see right here where they clip in. So give them a seat, give it a push, click, click, it is on. We're almost ready. All you got to do now is put on your PTFE tubes. Make sure that you line it up with the numbers on top of the print head. Okay, like I was saying, make sure that you match up these holes with your spools because they're numbered. You can see right here number 3. I make sure that I matched it up with the number 3 here, and so on and so forth. You can go ahead and put your cable organizing clip back on just to keep your tentacles organized. Oh, what a happy sound. Make sure that everything moves freely. I don't like things to gum up. I'm going to put my printer buddy back on. This is my good luck charm. This is actually an Anycubic mascot by FlexiCraft, I think it was, or Flexi Factory. Maybe Flexi Factory? Oh, look, it says it right there, Flexi Factory. Yeah, so this guy, adorable. I love it. All right, let's put him back on. He watches over my printer and tries to help me. He's my good luck token. There we go. All right, got my buddy back on. And don't forget to do your calibrations. If you didn't replace your tool head or your nozzle or your hot end or any type of wiring, you don't need to do the PID calibration again. It's probably a good idea to do your resonance, and definitely a must on the auto leveling. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful, and if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, don't forget to leave them in the comments. Okay, I've loaded some filament, and I'm gonna go ahead and see if it extrudes. Since we had to solder a sensor back in, and I'm a little bit concerned just to make sure that that sensor is working. Let's find out if it turns the gear and extrudes the material. Well, that's a good sign. I can see it pulling from up here, which means it should extrude. See, the number 1 light just lit up. Yeah! Totally fixed. Awesome. Now I just need to print some more maker chip coins for the next level maker event coming up next week in Texas. I'll be there. See you there. If you want to see more content like this from me, make sure you subscribe, like, and follow. Thank you.